may have, if I didn't, mentioned in my talk that I have a brain injury. And many times you will see me with headphones on, not because I'm listening to music, but because I'm trying to block out too much input. And an interesting thing happened to me after that, because I was different, and there were new things that I had to learn how to do, or how I had to learn how to do again, or that I had to learn how to do differently. And I decided to treat that like I was in a new culture. And by doing that, it gave me a new context, and it gave me a way of coping with the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like about having this craziness going on in my head. And I've decided that all of this Teams and Zoom and Flipgrid and all the things that you're going to be learning about now for teaching online is also a new culture. All of this, and it's universal. It's universal in the sense that we're all in this together. And so the pandemic, which is part of this new culture that we don't like, it's a fact that's created an interesting kind of creative moment for communicating, and communicating with the tools that we have of the day. And it's also speeding up the process of different modalities that are universal. So now, while we are all still impacted by our own personal cultures and community cultures and state and societal cultures that we live in context of our language, we now have this. And all of us have this in common. So suddenly, the entire world has a reference group called Zoom, or a reference group called Internet, that we all have access to in a way that we didn't in the past. And so if we look at it this way, we are going to find things that are confounding, that are frustrating, that are confusing, but that are accessible. And so I think that's something to think about. You know, it's kind of a new way of looking at things. In the same way, you know, you're all English, many of you are English teachers. So you're already somewhat familiar with either British or American or the Australian, or wherever you learned your English, the context for that, part of your world Englishes, and how important those connections are. So when you're teaching your languages, things that you take for granted and often don't think about need to come to the surface for you to be able to share that with your students, which will also engage them. That's another tip for engagement. And one of the questions in the discussion board was tips for surviving all of this or for coping, right? So my first tip for that is become a very good observer. That when suddenly you realize you're uncomfortable, just start watching what's going on and try to become more reflective about what you're seeing and what you're feeling in that moment. And sometimes you have to get away from that to see it. Sometimes you can't see it in the moment. The second tip that's very important is this one I told you about, the departmental secretary, but find yourself cultural informants, people that you're comfortable talking to, that you can say, where I come from, I would be this way. Is that okay? You know, I think one of you mentioned in one of the discussion groups about feeling that your culture is very direct. Well, that doesn't mean we don't have direct people here, but it's how you contextualize your behavior and your language. And you begin to choose to use different kinds of phraseology and different kinds of contextualization for getting your needs met. Because that's what this is all about, is meeting your needs, meeting your students' needs, meeting your community's needs, understanding the needs of the department and the requirements and all of that. So you're dealing with this, in this paradigm of the internet and Zoom, you're dealing with what is the culture of your department that you're in your languages, foreign language department, and American education is a culture. And you're dealing with some of you who will be here, just the physical nature of moving around differently. All of those things are pieces of what's getting added to your suitcase involuntarily. So from there, you observe, you find people to ask questions, and don't be shy. All questions are good. There are no such thing as stupid questions. There's always 10 people in the room who have that question, and if nobody asks it, nobody gets the answer. So that's important. I will say that over and over again to you. I get a little bit redundant on what I think are the critical things. And the other thing is, when you put your judge hat on, you have to stop back a minute and say, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just different. And I may not be so comfortable with it, or I may be more comfortable with it, but I'm gonna have to get used to it. And if you remember the chart, that's like an upside down triangle where my country, my culture, my language is good. The other one is not good and I don't like it over here. And that's a continuum. And you start to move across it. And sometimes you get over here and you go, ooh, I like this one better, right? And I like that. I'm going to keep that one. I'm going to keep using it and doing it. And that I like what we have in this new culture place better than what I had at home, right? That's okay too. But then you have to balance that out when you get back. So keep all those things in mind. And then as you are more bilingual, bicultural, you get more adaptive, where you adapt to things whether you like them or not. Or if somebody keeps feeding you a food that you don't like, you learn how to say no thank you, and how to avoid that, or to be able to explain why you don't eat that food. You know, and how you work through that. I am going to say, where food is concerned, unless you have a dietary restriction, you should try everything once. I will tell you that when I was around 20, I think, maybe 19 or 20. And I went to Japan on a study abroad program. And my host family, a friend of mine, a Japanese friend of mine, took me to her family for the weekend. And it came time to breakfast, and we were all sitting around this little table, and they brought out this beautiful bowl of white rice that was steaming. And on the table there were eggs and this very weird looking bean thing that looked so bad, I just knew there was no way I was going to put it in my mouth. It looked bad, it smelled bad, it was sticky, everything about it was awful. And I didn't ask, you know, and then there was dried fish, and I love fish, so there was this dry fish, and that was breakfast. Like, okay, here's my try. And in my head was my mother, who said, someone has cooked that for you, eat it. At least try it, make an effort, say thank you, right? And in the other side of my head was my father, who says, you can do anything once. And the next thing I knew, they took that beautiful bowl of steaming white rice and the bowl of beans, and they took one of the eggs and they cracked it into the beans. And I was shocked because I didn't expect it to be raw. So they put the raw egg in the beans, which already looked terrible. And then they added mustard. Ugh. So I now have smelly, brown, sticky beans with raw eggs and mustard. Oh my God. And they put it on top of the rice. He handed it to me. Please, meshiagate kudasai, which means, please help yourself. I hope you enjoy what I have made for you. And all I kept thinking is, I wish there was a dog under the table that I could kind of just drop it. And the consistency is very sticky. So when you're already dealing with some new kind of degree of stuff in your mouth that's different, and it's very bitter. It's bitter. It was surprising to me. And after the first bite, I knew it was just going to make me sick. But I could hear my mother and father in my head, and I was supposed to try everything once. And so I ate the bowl, and then I ran to the bathroom. And when I came back, she said, "Oh, I'm so happy you like it." And there was a second bowl. I want you to know that now I go to the store and I buy that stuff. It's called natto. It's fermented soybeans, and I love it. And I love it raw, and I love it with a beer. And I eat it all the time now. And my first 3 bites, I was sure that I was going to put it back in the bowl. So you just never know. And I know that's kind of a long story, but everything in culture is like that moment. You might find that things that you didn't like in the beginning, you start to like, and it's weird and you're surprised. But it's, and at the same time, I learned this, I also learned this. You say no thank you in Japan and many cultures. You say no thank you, and after the 3rd no thank you, they give it to you anyway. But you're required to say no thank you 3 times. And you never say thank you right away. And so even if you say no, it comes. And so there it is. And here, if you say no thank you in the United States, no, it won't come. So at home, I had a student who came to me one day and said, "My host family doesn't feed me." And this host family was famous for good food and a lot of food. So I called the host, and before I called the host, she called me and she said, "He never eats anything. He doesn't try anything. He doesn't eat anything. I'm worried he's losing weight." So I had a student who tells me they don't feed him and a host who tells me he doesn't eat anything. And it was because he was from a culture that you say no thank you 3 times and it comes anyway. And so he was saying no thank you, and that was the end. The food wasn't coming. So I took him home one day and I went and I said to her, make a chocolate cake or something, because she was a really good baker. Make chocolate cake and coffee, and I'm taking him home today. And she said, "Okay, and we'll talk about this." So we walked in and she offered us cake and tea, and I said, "Are you going to have some?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Okay, I'll have a small piece." And he said, "No, thank you." And I said, "Would you like some tea?" "No, thank you," he said. So when she walked out of the room, I said, "You know that she's going to come back with a piece of cake for me and tea for me and nothing for you." He just looked at me, and I finally explained to him that he had to say yes. And then they became all in love, and he got fat and she was happy, and the end of the story was a happy ending. But if you don't ask, if you don't try and look at it. So she's the kind of host now that when we put a student there, she says, in our culture. And she starts out by explaining things so that that doesn't happen again, even if she doesn't know what the other person's culture is. So all of those things are in our head, and we don't think about them until we hit a wall. And it's in that wall moment that the great stuff happens. That's where the challenges happen. So ask me questions.
So Leah, we've got multiple questions for you.
Oh,
and
good.
I don't know if we want, if you want me to ask them, or if
Yeah.
you'd like me to call on the name of the person that asked the question and let them do it.
Whatever, I'm good.
Okay. Ira, are you there?
Yes.
Ira Wardani?
Yes.
Hi. Ira,
Hi.
can you ask your question? I've got it typed here, but why don't it be better coming from you?
Well, my question is concerning about how to effectively address some cultural issues when, the United States is famous for being like a mosaic. So people have all these different backgrounds. They identify themselves as African American or Mexican American, or Asian American. I feel like um, there will be some major differences when it comes to that, and also on cultural appropriation, because it's a new concept for us. Like, we don't share the same history when it comes to like the races. So I come from a culture where we have hundreds of different ethnicities, so we always try each other's clothes. We always like do each other dances. So maybe it would be really good to be educated on that issue.
So we are a very diverse culture, and there are varying degrees of tolerance and intolerance and fear. And in this moment in the United States, there's lots of fear. And that's most unfortunate, because fear is a barrier. And fear separates us and says, the other, I'm good, the other is bad, right? Or the other is unknown, or the other wants to make me change, right? And that the other's going to take away my way of life. The other is, and that's a very unfortunate thing to have be coming to the surface in a time where our diversity is increasing. So you as a Fulbrighter, all of you as Fulbrighters, now have a role. And you have a role in that you will be introducing. You're not just coming here to learn about us. You're coming here to help us understand you, and to know about you, and to know about the diversity of Indonesia, and to know about the meaning of your scarf, and to know about why you eat this or that or not something else, right? And you will find that Americans are also very curious, and they want to know. And sometimes, like all of us, they are shy to ask as well. And so it's an opportunity for you. It's like my brain thing, right? I mean, I seem quite normal to everybody. I'm not. I've got lots of problems that nobody can see. I have an invisible condition. You have a visible condition. You have that scarf on. I now identify you as one of them, right? But I may not understand. I think I talked about that. I may not understand why you wear a scarf. And so if somebody is curious and you get a sense that they are, share with them about modesty, or what it means in terms of your culture and your comfort zone, and what you chose to do when you were 12, and that now you're uncomfortable without it. That it's part of you. It's and it's also an expression of who you are by the colors you pick and the way you cover. The Afghans cover really lightly, and it's quite ironic to me because I find it very seductive. but in fact, it's not there for that reason. And so it's also, be able to explain to people that there's a spectrum, like Hall's low context and high context, or like the top row of that triangle, of where things are different even within your culture, and how much you respect other religions and hope for the same for yourself. We are ambassadors. All of you are ambassadors. Take every opportunity to share your culture. That will be a great moment. I thought kind of long answer to a short question, or a not long enough answer to a short question, but it's an important one for all of us to be aware. And if you ask, like if you were curious and you said, I'd like to go to church with you on a Sunday. I'm curious, right? I'd like to learn about religions. In that moment, there's opportunity for then people to ask you questions. It doesn't mean you have to believe it. I've been in churches, I've been in mosques, I've been in all of those religious circumstances and different spiritualities, and it's broadened me. I'm still Jewish. I'm not going to stop being that. That's part of who I am. I don't eat pork. That's part of who I am. So you want to be able to recognize that you also need to reach out, and vulnerability lowers filters. So don't be afraid of that. And if you do get in any way, shape, or form harassed, your campus will have a place to report that. Do not be shy about reporting any time you feel abused or disrespected in such a way that causes you fear. Every campus has a reporting for that. We don't tolerate disrespect, okay? So do not be shy about that.
Okay, so, I'm sorry. Good. Okay, so the next question is Iman. Iman, are you here?
You can
Yes.
read it if she's not.
Hi, Iman, how are you?
I'm here.
Yeah, great. I love your question. Can you share it with Dr. Lanier?
Yes, now that I get to share the question verbally, I'll tell you the story behind the question.
Good.
I was in the US in 2018. I'm the first Emirati to participate in the IWP program, the University of Iowa Writers Program, and I wrote a movie. It's the first feminist short Emirati movie. I come from the UAE, from Dubai. So when screening the movie in the senior college in the University of Iowa, the movie is just 16 minutes. After that, I was ready for any question, for discussion. It was not my first screening, but I got a kind of weird question. Someone asked me, because the movie talks about three Emirati females, and all of them, they usually were covered in black color headscarf. And someone asked me, why do you all wear black? And this is when I realized that sometimes some traditions and cultural aspects are just taken for granted. And I wanted to ask you, Dr. Leah, what do I do in such situations when, some of the traditions and cultural aspects that we understand why we do, but on the other hand, there are stuff that we don't actually know why we do. I don't know why I wear black most of the time. So what should I do? How should I answer? And,
That's a great question. I love that question, because now you're in pink, I see. But
yes, no more black.
Yeah. I would use. I'm gonna say something kind of bizarre, but my first thought is to say to you, why do people choose a red sweater to wear? I know that at the University of Arkansas, people wear red t-shirts and red sweaters because it's school spirit and that's the university's color. And so some days people choose it just because there's a game. But then there's some people who think about it. Think of some Americans you met that always are in red or that usually wear blue. You know, it's like, it's both. There is a tendency toward black because a lot of people like it, and culturally we do it, period. It's not a complicated explanation. People ask me all the time, when I wear a color, people go, oh, wow, you're so colorful today. Because I'm almost always in black. Everything in my closet is black. But I have colored scarves and other things. And it's just because I'm comfortable in black, right? So I think that there isn't necessarily an explanation for that. Why are all the abayas in Afghanistan blue? You know, and why are all of them in Saudi Arabia black? Right? Just because culturally what we do. It doesn't always have a deep, complicated thing. Now, on the other hand, you can talk about scarves and how they evolved. That they were for protection from the sand and the elements, but that they became also a part of a spirituality and as a symbol of modesty. And that was an evolution that came with Muhammad and came with the beginnings of Islam. And so you can say it didn't just like happen. That, I mean, Jews, there are Jews on that spectrum, you know, that cover, that still cover today. And it's the same story. And then there are those of us who don't. It's an evolution and it's a choice. Always remind them of choice. So it doesn't matter what the color is, but it just happens to be that in our culture, more women than not prefer it. It's a preference.
Yes. Thank you,
Because
Dr.
when you can't find an answer for why you do it, you have two choices. You can write it off to it's a preference within our culture, or you can see if you can find anything in the research that talks about the evolution of it. But my guess is Afghanistan's blue, Saudi Arabia is black, Egypt is everything, you know, I mean.
Colorful, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate
Is that helpful?
Very. Thank you so much. Yeah.
And you can always just out loud say, I don't know. We just do it that way.
Yeah, that what I said back then, and then I asked my friend and back in the UAE, and I called her, and she just, you know, she told me just tell them black is sexy. That's all.
I like that. That's
Yeah.
very good. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you,
I think-
Iman.
Yeah.
So the next question, Dr. Lanier, comes from Hanani. Or am I saying that right?
It's actually Hanan.
Hanan.
Yes,
Hi,
it's
Hanan.
Hanan. And it means tenderness.
Oh, nice.
Thank
it
you.
mean?
Tenderness. Can you hear me?
I love it. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. So my question was about the notion of time in different cultures, okay? In one of the articles you shared with us, you spoke of the polychronic time, a notion of time which actually is in my country. Can you hear me well? Should I? Okay.
I can
So-
hear you fine.
Oh, fair. Okay. So as I come from a culture that cherishes polychronic notion of time, for me, if I meet a student on my way to a particular meeting and student asks me about something, it is rude to say, oh, I have to go, I have a meeting. Okay, so I gotta stop, I gotta answer them, I can even give them books, I mean, and I may miss the whole meeting, okay? So how I make my supervisor, for example, or whomever I'm having the meeting with, understand my perspective, or how I saw that situation, that I couldn't leave the student there, or whoever that I met there and just attend the meeting. Is that, I mean, is there a possible way, or would I be rude to one of them? Thank you.
Okay, so rude is also a concept that is up for interpretation. And when it's a student that, or whoever it is that's interrupted you walking along the way, and I will confess to being notoriously late for that reason, okay, on everything I do. I'll be focused on something, something will interrupt me, and I let it take me away. I am more polychronic myself than I need to be in my role. And there are times when I just have to say to the person, I'm terribly sorry. I have a really important meeting that I must attend. How about let's make an appointment? Because I really want to have coffee or do something with you, right? But I can't do it in this moment, because the last thing you want to do is be explaining to a professor or someone that you have an important meeting with that's waiting for you and not respect their time, because we're timely here. If it's the meeting's at 8 and you walk in at 8:15, you better have a pretty good reason for why you're not there. And I just bumped into somebody doesn't cut it. So what you're going to need to do is yourself, and this is where one of those moments come, that you feel like you're being rude to the student, but the student won't think you're being rude. Are you from Mali? Where are you from?
Morocco in North Africa.
So you're from Morocco, okay? In Morocco, that would be rude. Here,
Yes.
it would be rude for you to not be at the meeting on time. So that's your perception. Remember that diagram of when you walk into a situation and you evaluate it? Okay, what you have to do is not miss the step called putting your feet in the shoes of the other. What's this meeting for? I can't just show up in the background, right? You teach your classes. If you're not there when class starts, the students will wait 15 minutes, you don't show up, they're gone. That's how long we give faculty for being late. But most of the time they're on time and they don't give me that. I'm supposed to be there. That's respectful. So it's more respectful to say to the student from our perspective, hey, or whoever it is, your friend, I gotta go now, I have a really important meeting, and you're gonna have to adapt. Whereas if I'm in Morocco and I know I have lunch with you at noon, that I can stroll in at 12:30 or 12:45 and say, oh, I bumped into Mohammed and we were chatting, sorry, right? Which will be great for me, right? So I will adapt easier than maybe Gavin will, because she's always on time. She's early, right? So it'll be easier for me to adapt to your culture than it would be for her, because she's gonna be there. And you might not be there yet, right?
Happens a lot, yeah. Like if you say 12, you mean 12:30.
Yeah. And then there are other places in Africa where 12 means 2. And if it's a party in the United States, it's fine to come late unless someone's invited you for a meal. And then they're cooking and they're planning for it to be ready within 20 to 30 minutes after you arrive. You don't want to show up late and have the food overcooked, So if they've invited for you a meal, there isn't any flexibility. If it's a party, people are coming and going. So make sure you know what kind of event it is.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. The next question is from Chama.
Shama, because it's written in French, so it's
Okay, great, Chama.
Hello, Dr. Lina. My name is Shama. I'm from Morocco too. So my question is about the cultural differences. I am from a high contact culture with the flexibility and so on, with punctuality issues. let's be honest. And I will be living in a low context culture. And I was told that there are some cultural differences between our cultures and so on. So how can I stop this from hindering our communication? Because, for example, I was told that there are people from some ethnicity or from some race, you cannot give them a compliment or ask them about their hair also. It would be rude. And in my culture, it would be okay, and people would even be happy if you say, "What do you do to your hair? It looks nice," and so on. It's totally okay and fine. But in another culture, people may take it as like an offense. Why are you talking about my hair? Because I don't know that. I don't know it's offensive to talk about someone's hair, and or for example, or to talk about the way they dress, or to talk about, well, ask them about why they're eating something or something like that. So my culture is okay, and I don't know that, and I'm doing it in a good intention, and so on. So how can I overcome such situations? Sometimes I may do it, and I don't even realize that I'm offending someone or I'm being rude to them. So how can I overcome such situations? These might, people might regard it as I meant to be offensive to them and so on.
Okay, so just as a general rule here in the United States, people do like compliments. They do like somebody, I mean, when somebody tells me they like my hair or they like my dress or whatever, it's kind of nice, you know, it's, you know, I thought I looked kind of funny in the mirror this morning. Glad it's not so bad. That kind of way we see ourselves. And where compliments get to be tricky is when you're doing things across genders sometimes, right? That you have to be careful if you're a male in how you compliment someone, that it doesn't sound like it's bordering on harassment or that you're coming at someone for a reason other than the compliment, right? And so it 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 it's a matter of trusting your instincts. Women compliment each other all the time in this culture. It's not uncommon. And oftentimes I will compliment a woman and my husband says, "Thank you. I wanted to say that, but I can't." And he's and so I'm his voice, you know. And I can say things he can't. And I can sometimes compliment a man, but I'm very careful at how I do that, right? If I say, I like your haircut, it's one thing. If I say, "Wow, that makes you look really handsome and attractive," then I'm implying more than that, right? Unless they're a really close friend and we've been talking to each other like that since we were kids. So again, context, context, context. The longer you're here, the more you observe. It's really interesting when Latins first come to the US and Europeans that kiss each other, right? You kiss each other as women, okay? Here, that would be weird. It's not something you do. And I watch my students, within the first week, they're all still kissing each other. And within a week, when they're in a group all together, they still are. But when they're around everybody else, they stop. And nobody says to stop. No one's asking them to stop. But they just begin to realize that that's not a common thing. And so it just, it's I told you, I think, I'm not sure if I said this, but my husband says I look different when I speak Japanese. And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, you get quieter, I get different." And it's not anything I was ever aware of until he pointed it out. And that's that crossing cultures and boundaries, that you get things a little bit like osmosis. you begin to take them on because you recognize that it seems odd, or the people have an odd response to something, so you stop doing that something. And in place of it, you put something else that you don't even realize you've done. So some of these things will happen naturally, and some you'll be more conscious about. As a linguist, which all of us in this room are at this moment, right? You're going to become more sensitive to those differences and become aware of why you do things the way you do, or to be able to say what I said to Iman earlier, is it just that's how we do it, period. Preference, history, culture. Okay?
Okay, so just to be clear, I was told to like never like talk about some African Americans hair, for example, to tell them like your hair is curly, or I like your hair, or like that's how I want my hair
I
to be, or
think that's
something.
what might be called an overcorrection, and it depends on who it is. I tell strangers I love their hair. Maybe I can just get away with it because I'm old, but I think that it's not uncommon that right now there are some, because of the cultural implications of Black Lives Matter and this shift that is happening in our culture, that things are more conscious and more overtly stated, right? If I say, I wish I had thick curly hair like yours, whether you're white or Black or Asian, right? It's because I envy that, or I have thin, skinny hair, you know? And so there's a fine line between that and something derogatory that someone says, I wish I had N hair, you know, the N word, which is not okay, because that's derogatory. You know the difference. You can, I'm gonna say, you are Fulbrighters, you are ambassadors. You know when you're doing something from the heart. And if you do something from your heart and you make a mistake, you will find out, because people will help you. Okay?
Thank you, Doctor.
And I think it also depends on how well you know someone, or if you don't know them at all.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So the next question is from Novi.
Thank you, Ms.
Oh my
Nelson.
God, this hour is going way too fast.
We have time for maybe 2 more questions. So Novi?
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Dr. Lanier. Thank you for the opportunity. So actually, I'm Novi from Indonesia, and I used to be an English teacher for Indonesian student, and this will be my first time experience in teaching my own language to American student. And I'm just curious about among the surface culture, shallow culture, and deep culture that you mentioned in your presentation, in terms of language teaching, which one that we are obliged to introduce to the students? Because when I heard about, oh, you are going to be the ambassador of your country, then I used to think about the surface culture, like what kind of food that I will show to the student, what kind of dance, what kind of, just like surface culture. But if we are about to introduce the shallow and also deep culture, I would like to ask your advice on how to insert that kind of cultural understanding in our material. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, first of all, you're going to find on your campus, there's going to be lots of opportunities with your international students and scholars offices, and all of your, even in a graduate seminar, you may be asked to give presentations. And I would take every opportunity that you have to go into the public schools and be a speaker, or join the culture clubs on your campus, and do that, because that's the place where there are already pathways and opportunities that are created. Here at the University of Arkansas, we have something called Culture Club, and they go to the public schools, they go to retirement communities, and you become a part of those communities that go out beyond the walls of your campus and share about your culture. So anytime you have an opportunity for stuff like that, volunteer. Volunteerism is a really strong value. The other thing is, in our culture, the great irony is, for example, the most donations and volunteering that happens in communities of poverty in the United States are other poor people. They volunteer more because they understand the circumstances that people are in. They help each other in their community. And you now have a community of international students. Together, you can do things. Where are you going to school? I mean, where are you going to be teaching?
I will be teaching this Friday in Arizona State University.
Okay, you're at ASU.
Yeah.
ASU has tons of these kinds of opportunities. You get involved. That's also a way for you to become more aware of yourself as well. What I say is, when you go to another culture, when you come home, you realize that you actually learned more about yourself than you learn about the new culture. Because the minute you find something that's not comfortable for you or that you're confused by, you learn what would make it not confusing. So that awareness is going to shift. You won't even notice it happening. And that's the beauty of it. And yes, it is very hard not to have a judge hat. I've still got one. I fight with my hat all the time. It's hard not to do that when something is just so incomprehensible to you. And so you start out by saying, I imagine this seems really hard for you to understand. Let's talk about it. You know, there's a roommate question I noticed in the chat just now. You know, let's sit down and talk about how we can work this out, right? I don't eat pork, you eat pork, right? I would like this pan to be just used. This is my pan, right? And I'm fine with your eating it. It just, please, this pan is for me. No matter how much I wash it, I want that pan to be not touched, right? So you'd be able to start having that conversation and say, I'm sorry, I'm kind of curious about what your food tastes like. Maybe we could make it with chicken sometime, right? But you look for ways of finding a compromise. And by saying, I respect yours, I'm not comfortable with that for me. And what you want to do is just get more and more comfortable with that. As long as that other person knows that they're respected, they're going to tolerate things that they're surprised themselves. People have big hearts. We have that in common. And we don't want to forget the humanity thing. Don't forget that. Even the strangest, there's a guy who works on my floor. He's a no mask, totally different belief system than mine. And the other day I wanted to explain that my health is at risk. I hope that you will understand that. And I'm asking for you either not to come into my office or to put a mask on if you need to come into my office. And if that's not going to work for you, we'll talk to your supervisor because it's required. That's just it. And something's required, you know, right now on your campus, we're all going to have to do it, whether we think it's okay or not okay, or we're opposed to it. And those are things we're all negotiating right now. The whole new reality, because within our own culture, we have things that are problematic. And so how do you say I respect that when really I just think you're wrong? That's not an easy place.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lanier.
Okay, so the next question is from Pierre.
Yeah, hello. You hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
So you kind of started to answer my question already, but I will try to focus on pedagogy or class management. But since we're cultural ambassadors, we will need to deal with sharing our culture and have discussions about it. And I guess it can lead to disagreements or conflicts. And I wanted to know if you had any techniques to start a debate or a discussion about society topic uh, that can create
Yeah.
conflict.
So two things. One is next week is Pedagogy Week. And during that time, we will all on your various campuses be talking about classroom management and discussions and how that works in the US and how to kind of plan your classes and handle that kind of thing. Second thing is that one thing that I think is very important culturally in the United States, when you're in a seminar class, which is generally a graduate class that's under 15, under 18 people, and where you're all sitting around, the expectation is that the students will come to class prepared and be ready to have discussion, and that having disagreements is part of that discussion. And so it's all about framing. I'm listening to you, and what I think I heard you say is, and you repeat back what someone has said. Do I understand that correctly? And if they say yes, then you can say, here's why I find that difficult, or why I might disagree. And if it's something that's in the context of the course content, then you need to be ready with your own sources, right? I recently read in article X, I'll send it to you, right? Something that conflicts that, and I'm wondering if there's a way we can talk about it, you know? And it's all, again, about framing and contextualizing and being respectful. The minute those three ingredients are there, then it helps people to become better listeners. And you're going to be the teacher. So if somebody starts a dialogue in your classroom and you find them to be starting to be not respectful, then you can say, I'd like to discuss that with you after class. You can manage that, right?
Okay.
And then let them know you think that was bordering on disrespectful. Let's talk about that. All right. Remember, there is that, in spite of how non-hierarchical and plebeian Americans think they are, there's still a hierarchy. So if you feel like it's confrontational in a negative way that's impacting your classroom dynamic, you want to make sure that you take it outside the classroom.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I hope that's helpful. You'll get more of that. You have another question? If anybody needs to leave because of other meetings or other things, please feel free. I'm happy to stay a bit longer. So as
We
you
only have one more question, I think, here.
okay.
And this question is from Taiwo.
Yes, Taiwo, thank you.
Taiwo, hi.
Doctor, thank you, Gavin. Dr. Lanier, you
Yes.
must have been a very good storyteller. I really enjoyed the story about your illustration about the box. Somehow, ma. Right. Right, ma. I have two questions, basically. The first has to do with religion and culture. Religion and culture. Can we really separate these two?
No.
For example, in my country, Nigeria, I'm from Nigeria, there are a sect of terrorists that have been terrorizing the peace of the country for some times. They are called Boko Haram. I don't know.
I'm aware of Boko Haram. Yeah.
All right. So they are proving that Western education is wrong, and they are trying to prove a certain theory about religion. So that's why I'm asking that, is there a difference between religion and culture and language? That's first question. And my second question has to do with acculturization. It seems some culture are well displayed and acceptable more than others. So I don't know if it's as if some culture are well represented in terms of presentation. Can we say other culture are not that valuable, or is it because the people are not well representing those culture? Because you mentioned that this FLTA has given lots of us the opportunity to teach our language and to to display the culture. So, and we have other culture that seems they are not well represented. So what can you say about this now? Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's start first with your circumstances of Boko Haram, right? Probably in all of our cultures, there are groups of people that are doing things that it doesn't matter whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or a Buddhist or a atheist, that are just wrong, right? People kill people, or people do things that are asserting their power in a way that is, killing is wrong. I mean, I don't think any of us, whatever our religion is, are going to argue with that, right? That we find ways to help people who are doing things that harm others, and begin to hopefully work with that within our culture, right? Let's talk about Rwanda, right? In Rwanda, you had Hutus and Tutsis, and you had a tribal war, and there was wrong on both sides. And finally, the way reconciliation could happen was there had to be this collective forgiveness, and to say that there was wrong on both sides, there was killing on both sides. We went crazy for a while, and together there was reconciliation. Reconciliation has also happened in South Africa. We wish we had reconciliation in our own country now, with coming to terms with our own history of slavery, or what happened to American Indians when the Europeans came to what is now the United States. We're all still working on that. And that's part of the humanity factor, that there are always collectively large numbers of people who want to ameliorate and reconcile and learn to forgive, which is a very difficult thing. But it is doable, and it is admirable, and it is the way we would like to be. You don't want all of Nigeria to be identified with Boko Haram, right? I don't want all of America to be identified by neo-Nazis or skinheads or other groups that I find their behavior offensive to humanity, not just to me, but to all of us. And so that's a reality that we all deal with, even in the most diverse and cultures that have come to terms with those differences and to respect them. All religion, from my perspective, comes from love. They're all designed to care for others. They're all designed, and how you define God or gods or none, all of those things come from still a place of love and respect. And it's trying to find that we are all about when I talk about why I think it's important that you are ambassadors, right? That's the bottom line. It's why education happens. So that it takes me to the second part of your question. Education. Paulo Freire, a very famous educator, said, education is radically about love. Martin Luther King said, education is the path to shared understanding. Einstein here on my wall said, education is the way to understanding science or humanity. Fulbright, peace through education. That's what this whole program is about. The Fulbright program is about peace through education. You meet one person at a time and you can't kill them. I totally disagree with this human being who works on my floor. I'm learning to talk around it and find out about his family, his community, and how we both got here from there. But that's also my responsibility to, if I think that I want to help him understand a different way, we've got to be able to talk about it. Not easy. Okay, so those are our challenges, and there are no simple answers, but the simplest answer is this is all radically about love and respect and having an open heart and an open mind. And when someone hurts that part of you, to be able to say, I hurt. That hurts me. Or if it's really serious, to go and do the appropriate thing, and that is, let the authorities on your campus know that you were treated disrespectfully, not just by words, but something that made you be afraid. God forbid that should happen to you or anyone.
All right, thank you, Doctor.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad they found some of the girls.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending this session. I know probably more of you have questions, and feel free to continue to write on Dr. Lanier's discussion board, or send her emails directly. She's always available and eager to interact with students and teachers. So our doors are open. And
can I just ask one question? Arwa, are you still here?
Yes, I'm here.
Did you have your hand up to ask a question or just?
Yes, I wanted to ask something, but if we need to finish, it's okay.
Go ahead, just go ahead and ask one more question. People, feel free to just keep going away, and I will give us till 9:15. Okay.
Okay, so from Israel, as some of you might know, it's a boiling pot of languages, cultures, religions, and through my life, academic and professional, I mastered how to talk about it, to be diplomatic about it, and to explain things to other people. But and this is what I'm going to be doing in the United States. But my question is how to learn about others' religions. I'm very curious about spiritualities, especially the ones not like other than Christianity and Judaism and Islam, because I already know so much about them. So my question is where, first of all, where to ask questions and how to ask these questions and not come off wrong.
Okay. Well, obviously you come from a corner of the world that lives in pain. And you have learned, as you so eloquently said, about diplomacy and about forgiveness. And it's the Hutus and the Tutsis. It's, we are, it's like sibling rivalry. I belong to a group called Cousins. It's a Cousins Club, and it's Arabs and Jews. And it's so important to be able to have that respectful dialogue, because it's the same thing as all of these conflicts. It's understanding it's wrongs that happened historically that people have no control over, but actually they do, but they're unwilling, and those are always edges. I go back to, if you are curious about other religions, and I can relate very much to that. I have gone to Catholic masses, and when I was much younger, I lived in a Buddhist temple for a while just to understand Buddhism and meditation and Zen. Anytime you are curious about another belief systems, people are more than happy to sit down and talk. There's nothing you can say that would be alienating, especially given who you are and your understanding of that. Is I'm really curious about the difference between Catholicism and Protestantism. Can I come with you sometime? We love to have people visit. People come and visit the local synagogue here very often. And I'm kind of a once a year Jew. I show up for certain things there that are very personally important to me, and other times I'm just culturally that. And someone else asked this question earlier, is there a difference between religion and culture? And religion is a culture. It's just a culture within a culture. You know, we have special food, all of us. You know, every religion has something that's special to them or that they don't eat. So the answer is language and culture are inextricably bound. We all know that. The language of religion and belief systems is shared on many levels because we talk about our concepts of God or our perception of God. And I'm guessing that this is similar for you if you are a Muslim, that for us, if I ask 10 Jews the same question, I'll get 10 answers because we're really high context. And that's true about our cultures. And it's true about our religious belief system, that the interpretations have the most extreme over here and the more liberal over here, just like anything else, right? Whether you are a Jewish person with payas and a long beard, and or not. And there are flags. So when you get to the United States, I'm guessing where are you going to be?
I'm going to be in New Jersey.
Oh,
Ramapo.
you can find any religion you want in New Jersey, and you should just, there's probably at your International Students and Scholars Office a list of, if you're Baha'i, if you're Muslim, if you're Jewish, if you're Catholic, if you're Buddhist, if you're whatever. They've got a list of where to go to get introduced. Go make contact. Ask somebody.
I'm very happy. Sorry.
Yeah. People love to share their own belief systems. Now, there are some people who are going to try and proselytize, and you can say, I'm interested because I want to understand how you express your belief systems, but I'm not interested in giving up my own. Make that clear, right? I'm curious. I love the idea of different ways of looking at things and perspectives. I believe that helps me grow and you talk about your personal reasons for that. That's hard to resist. I'd invite you in, and I know most people would.
So I shouldn't be afraid of asking?
No, never. Questions. We love questions. Americans love questions. They'd rather have a question and know that you might misunderstand something than to do something because you didn't ask.
I see.
I will tell you. Yeah, go ahead.
Here people tend to be afraid of these kind of questions because everyone is trying to get to.
Are you from the West Bank, or are you living in Israel?
I'm an Arab Israeli.
Okay, all right. And I have many friends who are Palestinians, and I have many American Israeli, Israeli Arab friends who were, most of them Fulbrighters, have been Arab Israeli that I've been with over the years. And you walk on a really important line because you have an empathy for both communities. And you're Everybody on the planet's an important human being, but you have a special role. That's a huge responsibility for all of us. I have a role that says, I'm a Jewish person, but I am not a Zionist, and have to be able to explain that to people because they don't know what that means, or they don't understand that distinction. So as much as I want to know, I also want to be able to explain so that I can bridge those places where there are no bridges, or people are afraid to cross.
Thank you so much for your answer and for reminding me of my responsibility.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You'll be a great ambassador. I would love to have you visit here sometime.
Thank you. I would love to.
You know, one of the slides of in my PowerPoint of the 3 and 4 pieces of wood, to me, that's Israelis and Palestinians. You just can't see the other side, and you got to be able to help people to get a different perspective. Thank you all very, very much. I hope that you have a great day. Thank you for staying, and please put questions in the discussion board and I will get to them. I will just little by little hammer away at them. So if you did not get a question answered, I will also be here tonight again, or what is my tonight. So if you want to come back later, come back later. I will be continuing to answer questions. So the other session is at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the evening. So welcome back.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Gavin.
That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you
Have a
all.
good
Have
day.
a great day.
Thank you a lot.
Thank
It was
you.
marvelous.
Thank you.